Hey guys, welcome, welcome, welcome. Hat Tuesday number 8. I am your host, Luke. I am actually going to just bring out folks as they come in. We already have Robert. I am going to add Robert to the stage. Robert, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, excellent. Welcome. I'm glad we got it all sorted out. I apologize for last week. It was completely my fault for essentially inviting you at the 11th hour. But I'm glad we have you.
Glad to be here.
All right, excellent. We got Josh in the audience. Good morning, Josh. Um, wow, what a again, Robert. I don't know if you had a chance to look at the at the last video. It really was an interesting discussion, and you were the brainchild of this. So for better or worse, in terms of what you thought of that discussion, you were the kind of the genesis of it. Josh brought it over and said, you know what, Robert made a great point when you came on about the idea of this duality amongst the traditions, right? And we got a conversation started. I was kind of out of town. Hi, Ian. How are you? We got my faithful moderator, Ian. And that discussion really kind of, just like any good discussion, a lot more questions sometimes spur from that. And I wanted to give it a fair shot. I said, okay, we didn't have Robert, so I want to continue that discussion just to see if there was anything else you wanted to add to that discussion. I know there was at least a couple tidbits I wanted to add, about this idea of the traditional fine felt hats, right? Which I believe yourself, Art Fawcett, and also Paul John Murphy. I believe you guys are kind of figureheads of that movement. As well as Grant Thompson of Optimo, and then you got your Nick Fouquet's, and Josh probably would be somebody that would fall into that kind of festival hat tradition. Probably as Brian Forbes as well, and Yabola hats, who you mentioned before. And I got a chance to look at Yabola hats after you mentioned them, and wow, you were spot on. He seems to be like the UK version of Brian Forbes. They seem to have very similar styles.
Yobola is like he is I'm not sure. He is a category unto himself.
Yes,
He
yes,
is I think he is even more unique than Brian Forbes.
yeah,
Because Yobolo's hats are um they're not so much made as they're constructed.
yeah, yeah.
Um it's yeah.
Yeah, there's some engineering going on. I know what you mean because he has kind of it's almost like a mechanical engineer would
Yes.
approach a hat.
Yeah. Yep.
It is really, it's something else. And it's, just when you think you've seen it all, right? And then you see something like that.
Yeah, which it's it's the aspect of hatting that like it's so um, fantastic because it's
Yeah,
the breadth of it. It's and Yopolo kind of, I mean, I think truthfully he's much more in the milliner's camp
yeah.
in terms of his style and his technique, whereas Brian is a hatter that has taken it out to the edges.
Yeah, I had a great question about that because you're the one that got that in my mind. You mentioned the class that you took that was taught by a milliner. I believe, if I recall correctly, you were trying to take the fedora making class, but you missed out on that. Um, and
It's worse than that. I I didn't read the fine print, and yeah, I couldn't make the class
yeah,
on fedora making, and then so I signed up for the one the following month, and I didn't realize I thought that I just signed up for another fedora making class, and it wasn't until I got in there because the class was taught by the same woman, same
yeah,
company, same space, and then when I got into the class, I discovered that it was me and 13 women
yeah.
all wanting to build fascinators. So uh, it was actually quite good. They adopted me and
Yeah.
felt sorry for me, and yeah, it was fun. It was actually a um, uh, a good mistake.
Understood. Well, it got me thinking about, right? So, one of the things that Brian does that's a little bit different is this, right? He doesn't use leather sweatbands, at least in the two hats that I purchased from. I didn't know, like, I just assumed that that was a kind of a nod to the millinery side. But given that you took a class from a milliner, I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Well, actually, Brian Forbes, um, as in any field, Brian Forbes has borrowed a lot of his stylings from
Yeah,
someone else.
got it.
He is not the originator.
Yeah.
There's I can't remember, his last name was Westwood. He's the son of the fashion designer Vivienne Westwood, and his brand is Child of the Jago, Jago,
Okay.
and he's kind of in the fullest sense. He's a fashion designer that I don't know if hats is his full-time thing or if he
Yeah.
dabbles in hats, but he's from the high fashion side,
Yeah.
being that his mom is Vivienne
Yeah.
Westwood. And one of my clients owns one of Westwood's hats. And so I stand to be corrected, but she told me that Westwood was the originator of that oversized tall crown.
Yeah.
And so she brought one over. She took a couple of my classes, and so I said, bring one of those hats over one day. So
Yeah.
she did, and it was fascinating because that's how he affects the oversized. Because inside, rather than a sweatband, is a round foam, almost like pipe insulation,
I see. Yeah.
and that becomes and he covers it with I think it was a type of terry cloth absorbent
Okay.
material
Yeah.
over the foam. But
Okay.
that's how he gets the oversized hats to actually fit on the head.
Wow. That's really amazing, to be honest. It's like building that's like architecture for hats.
Yeah, yeah. I would. I want to make one day just for the experience of it. And
Yeah.
but my wife, I make most of my experiments in the realm of women's hats in my wife's size, and so
Yeah.
and she's kind of instructed me to not make her any more hats. And she's not interested in owning an
Yeah.
oversized bowler hat. So it's like uh, I have no willing prey to foist the hat upon. So
Yeah. Yeah. Now the Ebola hats, gentleman, I believe, because I'm gonna assume it's the gentleman because I've seen him in several photos.
I'm
Um,
assuming that's him, but it's like I don't know.
yeah, exactly. I just gonna assume because I feel like he's the common denominator in a lot of photos, and I believe the term Ebola is kind of a nod to kind of the indigenous, I believe, of Bolivia, either Bolivia or Peru. I always screw that up.
Oh, that may I haven't seen it lately, but early on, that's how I came across him because I was looking for a prototype to steal
Yeah,
because I was looking to make a little bit more fashion forward replica of the derbies that the Bolivian women,
yeah,
and I'm pretty sure that's where I came across him, and so that used to be um, a main offering of his,
yeah.
kind of his signature piece, but
Right.
he seemed to have he's moved way beyond that lately.
Yeah, yeah, and bless them because again, these are the way somebody else will see that and say, you know what, I'm going to add my unique twist. Paul was on here. I believe this was on Friday, and he mentioned, I believe he mentioned or showed a hat by Bates and Co. And it had again, this is very, very, didn't seem like a big deal, but you're like, why don't all the hats have them? It's like a little hook that they built in, to the back of the sweatband. And, because, I use hooks, to hang my hats. I'm assuming, other people do too. And it just seems like it would be a thing that you should be in every hat. But apparently I've only seen it on that Bates & Co. that, that Paul showed. And I'm like, wow. And obviously there could be kind of an engineering standpoint. Maybe it's a little tricky to do.
Like a little, sorry, is it like, I have a hat from Bob Jesse at Black Sheep Hat Works.
Yeah.
And would he, where the little bow is at the back of the sweatband,
yeah,
he has a little cloth loop stitched into the sweatband.
Yeah.
With the idea of you have something to hang the hat on, or with.
Yeah, it's some sort of cloth. I mean, it looked like a piece of essentially string, like a thick string that would hold the hat. Obviously, the hats won't weigh that much, so it doesn't need to be ultra, reinforced. But and in many ways, and when Paul, hopefully Paul joins us today, and that he was looking forward to chatting with you, picking your brain. But when he showed it, and obviously if he comes on, I'll ask him to show it. That way you can see it visually. But it just seemed like, okay, that's useful, right? As something from a pragmatic standpoint, it's useful. And then you're like, okay, maybe there's a little trick to do, or maybe it increases the cost and time to make the hats. There's some reason for why this hasn't caught fire. Kind of like, some of the other things that you're like, once somebody innovates it and everybody sees the utility of it, you get a lot of folks that are like, okay, I'm going to do that, but you never know, right? It's like, maybe everybody doesn't think like I do. And that's probably a good idea.
With my Black Sheep hat, it's like, I've never used it. Because, I keep all my hats in boxes.
Yeah.
We have our heating system it's a forced air, and the dust accumulation is it's huge.
Yeah.
And if I leave a hat out, I don't know, say a week, if it's a dark colored hat, like, it's amazing, scary amazing how much dust accumulates on it.
Yeah.
So I tend to, other than my shop hats, I don't leave my hats laying about.
Yeah. Understood. And Josh just mentioned potentially turning the bow into a hook for the hat. And I thought about that too. And when I would always see the back bows on a lot of the vintage hats that I've purchased, and I'm like, oh, if that was maybe pulled out a little bit, maybe that could be used as a hook. I've never done it, only because, well, I didn't want to kind of ruin something. Only because I can't tinker with my hats. But for you guys that are really great at restoring hats, and obviously the hatters that make the hats, something like that would be easy to experiment with, because you could probably fix it.
Yeah, the bows that I use are a loosely woven ribbon material, and they would deform really quickly. There's not enough substance to them.
Yeah.
To hold the hat, so it would have to be a little bit a more tight weave on the ribbon for sure.
Yeah. And Ian opined that the hook looked like it was metal to him. It might have been, Ian, to be honest. We can definitely, once, hopefully Paul gets on here, and then we'll ask him to show the hat again. But in the meantime, one other thing that that I guess came out of it, but came out of that discussion that we had last week, that I guess I intuitively knew, but I guess when I shared that map, now that you're part of the board of directors, Robert, you probably saw that map. Now that map was generated by ChatGPT. I never put complete faith in anything I get from ChatGPT. I ask it to do stuff. Sometimes it does cool stuff, and I share it. But I always mention, hey, you do your own research, right? But one of the things that came out of that discussion, or that map, was that it seemed to kind of automatically lump in a lot of the regions that one would connote with, would associate with Western hats, right? And I guess that was the other distinction that we never really made, because really the genesis of both the traditional fedoras as well as the festival hats are in the Western hat, right? Because essentially the Western hat really came into be somewhere in the like mid 1800s or so, right? So we know Stetson was founded in 1865. So right around that time is probably when the Western hat kicked off, and then the fedora came afterwards, and obviously the festival way after. But that was that distinction that we really didn't see in that map. And maybe now I would probably try to see if I could get ChatGPT to regenerate that map just to see if there will be a difference. I would think there would be, because yeah. I mean, what do you think, Robert?
Yeah, it's always hard to pin down hybrids.
Yeah.
And the festival hat is, I think, very much fits into a hybrid category.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I don't know, I haven't done any investigating on it at all, and I think in general Nick Fouquet is credited with the marketing of that style.
Yeah.
Now I don't know enough about it to know, is he the originator,
right,
or is he just the most successful copier?
Right.
You know, where, like, I mean, it's I guess it's such a gray area, because like his inspiration might have been seeing a homeless guy in Los Angeles wearing a very rumpled cowboy hat, thinking,
Yeah.
oh, I can sell that.
Right.
Yeah. I can tart that up and sell it to the wealthy folks that are looking for the next big thing.
Yeah.
Who knows where the inspiration came from.
Right.
But I think for certain he is the one that popularized it, and is by far the most successful maker of that style of hat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why it found a market, who knows? I'll never know.
Yeah. Yeah. And I always kind of, and this is probably way off. Again, my brain, sometimes I make connections when I shouldn't. But I always think about like the idea of wanting to be different, right? If you ever have like a set of siblings, I had lots of siblings that you kind of sometimes when you're very similar, you share the same parents. There's that desire to kind of really assert your own personality, right? To plant your flag and say, no, I am this kind of person. We have the same blood running through our veins, but I'm this way. And I feel like generations, sometimes there's that yearning to kind of find something different, only to leave your mark. And I feel like hatters can also follow that same suit. And that's why you get things like, the festival hat that kind of came afterward. And who knows what the next thing will be? Maybe something more structural like Yabola's doing. I feel like that kind of engineering. Yeah. Go ahead, Robert.
That opens the door to a path that I, if you'll indulge me.
Absolutely.
Well, two things on that is in our efforts and our desire to be different.
Yeah.
We end up creating a tribe. Correct. That looks all the same.
Right.
So if you look at the groupings that have strived to be different, and if you want to take it back to the 60s,
yeah,
the hippies, kind of that first huge pushback. If you were dressed in the hippie uniform, it was pretty damn obvious to which tribe you belonged.
Right.
So in your effort to be unique, you ended up being highly identifiable.
Yeah.
And you could apply that to goth. It's you see a person walking down the street towards you dressed as a goth, immediately to which tribe they belong, which renders them not unique.
Correct.
So it's I mean, and that I'm sure that's true throughout history.
Yeah.
The second thing is around the festival hats as introduced by Nick Fouquet, like that style.
Yeah.
The semi Western, distressed,
Right.
fabric rather than ribbons, and et cetera, et cetera. I remember when it first came out and they joined the Fedora Lounge,
Right.
and there was a huge pushback, and then particularly when Nick Fouquet's partner passed. I'm so terrible with names, and because he was the hatter and Nick Fouquet was the spokesmodel.
Right.
He was the man with the connections within the fashion industry. I think it was his father is or was a bigwig in that field. So Nick had multiple connections in the fashion industry. So he really started with a huge leg up.
Yeah.
But his hats as hats were terribly constructed.
Oh, right.
They were not good hats at all.
Right.
And I think there was kind of a general consensus, and it'd be interesting to again to talk to somebody closer to the source.
Yeah.
That the genesis of that style grew out of Nick's ability or inability to build a good hat.
Interesting.
So how do you hide the flaws in a poorly made hat?
Yeah.
Distressing is one great start.
Yeah.
The other thing is, if you're distressing a hat, if that's your intention, you could start with second quality felts.
Very interesting point. That
save yourself a chunk of money.
Yeah.
That still happens. Winchester, it's surprising the high numbers of seconds.
Yeah.
The felting process is an inexact process, and they come up with a lot of seconds.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, the defect is barely discernible.
Right.
And sometimes there's big holes in the felt, so it really runs the gamut. But so just indulge me a few more points on that, and then I don't know if you get feedback from your audience, but we'll see if we can generate some pushback.
Yeah, we got Josh already applying. First of all, Paul joined us. Welcome, Paul.
Hey, Paul. Hi, Robert. Good to see you. Good to meet you last, actually.
Yes.
Yeah. This is really a real honor.
Oh, thank you. Let me continue before I forget. But, the other huge thing about the and it's not so much the distressing aspects cover you can hide flaws in the quality of your build.
Yeah.
The second thing is with the overall festival style, which at least how I use the term, it really does identify a certain profile of a hat. And as we talked, it's the Western profile with a flat brim.
Right.
And which makes the cost of entry into that field about as minimal as you can get.
Yeah.
You need but one style of block. Number 51 will handle it. You don't need any flanges because they're all flat brimmed.
Good point.
I know a hatter here in Vancouver, and when he began, that's how he began. He had one set of blocks, and that was it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he's still don't think he has any flanges. He had a couple that he just gave them to me because he wasn't using them.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's been in business almost as long as I have, and like, he hasn't ventured beyond that profile. Like all of his hats fit that profile, and then the styling part comes into how he trims it.
Right.
So he's got a big bin of fabric, and he chooses the fabric to make the, not the bow, but I don't know, just the overall trimming.
Yeah.
So it's, so when you look at it, because the other thing I find fascinating is there's another hatter, Dante, and I met him. He was in Eastern Canada, and so we met on Facebook, and we were communicating back and forth. And I chided him for encroaching on my turf, because I said, until you came along, I could, in absolute good faith, bill myself as Canada's preeminent classic fedora maker.
Yeah.
And the reason I could make that statement, I was the only one. And then I said to Dante, I said, and then you come along and you take my title.
Yeah.
Or he doesn't don it, but I can't say that anymore, because now there's another guy 3,000 miles away, and that was his field. He wanted to be a classic fedora maker.
Yeah.
Well, luckily, he's moved to Spain.
Okay. All right.
Now I can go back to billing myself as Canada's preeminent classic fedora maker.
All right. That's
because I am the only one. There's probably a couple of dozen hatters out there in Canada, custom hatters.
Yeah. And none of them are classic fedora.
Not as far as I know.
No. See, I'm of the same school as you, Robert. I love the classic fedoras, especially from the higher crown era, and I just think they're very classy. They're a lovely style. They're a beautiful hat to make. But I'm picking up on the point actually of the equipment and things and the blocks. I've started with two ranges of blocks, and then what I've done is I've made a stepping stone, so to speak, of adding platforms that go underneath the blocks to give it more height. So I've got effectively it widens the range of blocks that I've got. But in the UK, it's difficult to get good quality old classic second-hand equipment, and buying new, you can still get it from people like Boone and Lane, who are world renowned for building the wooden blocks, but they're not cheap. They're just under £200 a block, so you're talking about £1,000 or more for a set, and it takes a while to build up the cash to be able to do that sort of investment. But it's certainly a journey that you said, as soon as you start hatting, you never ever get to the end of the journey of buying equipment, and I'm certainly seeing that. That's for sure. Yeah.
I'm coming to the end of my 7th year, and I had to have a heart-to-heart talk with myself yesterday, because I just found another $1,000 worth of tooling that emotionally I desperately need. So I think after my heart-to-heart talk, I think I've talked myself off the ledge, but who knows?
Well, gentlemen, we have a question here from Josh. He wants to know if any of you gentlemen have thoughts on Y hats. I'm not familiar with them.
What was the name?
It's on screen. He says Y hats. I've never heard of them. But he said, Josh says he is similar to Nick, but I feel is much more sloppy or slopey. Slow, not sloppy. Sorry, I'm reading wrong. He says similar to Nick, but I feel is much more slopey. But I don't know if you meant sloppy. Josh, let me know if slopey was what you meant.
I don't know the guy. I'm afraid I've not seen the brand.
Okay. Well, I'll certainly check him out now. Interesting name, Y hats.
If you I think I have heard of him, but I'm not familiar with his work. But I think Paul, for every one of us um, that is engaged in making the classic fedora, there's at least 10, if not 20, hatters making the distressed festival style of hats.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
I
like
mean, I'm very interested in what you said about Nick. Yeah.
You go on Instagram, and it's like page after page after page of that style of hats, and not that many classic makers. And
Right.
it goes back to the conversation that you and I had, Luke, weeks ago about, I've yet to see one of those hats on the street on a head, and I'm thinking, okay, apparently people are buying them, but what the hell are they doing with them?
Yeah.
Unless I'm okay, I have to. The one caveat is, I've never been to a festival in my life.
Yeah.
So maybe that's where they all are, and people are buying them.
Yeah.
Full disclosure, I've made 3 festival hats in my life, in my career.
Right.
2 of them for ladies and 1 for a gentleman. In my defense, none of them were distressed.
Right.
But the 2 ladies' hats were tarted up, and they bought them specifically to go to festivals.
Right.
1 to Coachella, and 1 to the one was a more overt Western, and she wanted to wear it to the Calgary Stampede.
Yeah.
And they sent me pictures. They did wear it, and I'm not sure it's been on their head since. So that could bolster my point that people buy them, wear them to a festival, and never to be seen again.
Yeah.
I must admit, here in the UK, we've got a marketplace that's is slowly moving towards more Western at the moment, especially with the sort of open road half style. And
I've noticed
I'm making more of this sort of thing here, which is I like to think it's more of a classic style hat with a bit of the festival look on it, but it's something that perhaps I have seen people wear the ones that I've made of these on the street, but it's just a lot of the people here are buying them that are in the horsey sets, that they like that. But again, I mean, I've probably made no more than 6 or 7 and actually sold of these. So it's not my main marketplace. It's I mean, I'm working on a pink one at the moment, but with a wine coloured trim on the brim and on the crown, which hopefully will be quite nice when it's done. But it's just trying to take things a little bit different direction. But I don't think it's gonna it will be a long time to sell. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But can I ask you, Robert? Do you keep hats in stock to sell? Because I've built up a stock of, I guess, about 70 or 80 hats now that I've got that I can sell.
No, I was telling Luke earlier, I'd love to experiment, and if I would love to make more hats for ladies, because I find that it's like, if you're in that field, you've got such wider parameters in terms of certainly the color palette, and you can take a basic fedora profile and tweak it, with like the asymmetrical crown bash, and you can do. But unfortunately, I would say maybe 15% of my business is for women.
Right.
And I'd like to do more. So, but I do like to experiment, and that's as close as I get to making a hat not on commission. And I make them in my wife's size, and she gets them. But I have instructions from her. I'm not allowed to make her any more hats. So I've come to the end of that road. So
yeah.
Josh just made an interesting comment. He said hat bars are popular among the ladies now. I had no idea.
Oh, do you want to? I have a story about that.
Sure, lay it on us.
I think I knew they existed, but I didn't know any of the details. And this time last year, my wife and I were in South Carolina and Georgia, and it was at the end of the trip, and it was our last night in Charleston, and we found a hat store.
Okay.
And my wife and I walk in, and I was wearing a baseball hat because I didn't take a hat with me. And but anyways, my wife, the young clerk came over, and he said, "Can I help you?" And my wife said, "Well, we're just looking because my husband here is a hat maker." And the guy's his eyes lit up, and he said, "You're a hat maker? I'm a hat maker too." And turns out he worked in the store during the day, and then on his free time he had his hat shop in his 1-bedroom apartment. And so we chatted for about 45 minutes, all things hats, and he was so excited to kind of stumble across another hat maker, because I guess in Charleston there's not many of them. And then he says, "You have to go over to the hotel across the street, because the bartender, a lady, she's my we're in this business together." He says, "So she'll be thrilled to talk to you." So we went over there, and we sat at the bar and had a drink and talked hats with her. That's all the preamble, because it was the Hotel Bennett, way more upscale than my station in life, because the rooms are $1,000 a night. Yeah. So the clientele is different tax brackets above mine. And in the basement, there was a hat shop. No. And it was run by 3 ladies, and they billed themselves as a hat shop, custom hat maker. But how they paid the rent, for the most part, because you can imagine a shop in the Hotel Bennett is not going to come cheap.
Right.
And there's 3 of them. They got to draw enough salary to support 3 people. Their main business was hat bars. Hat bars and hat parties.
Right.
And I don't know how much they charged, but obviously it's a big enough deal that they're making a decent living out of it.
So that might be the outlet for all the festival hats, maybe, or at least some of them.
Because that's the other thing, is that my limited understanding of the hat bars is that because they go in with the pre-made hat, right, or at least pre-blocked and ready, because the hat bar is essentially you're decorating the hat.
Got it.
Right. They come in with and it's all as far as I can tell, it's your typical festival hat profile.
Yeah.
Flat brim. And then so they come in with the wrap, and often they're wool.
Right.
Because that way you can hit a price point. And so they bring the hats in an array of sizes and colors, and then all of the trimmings.
Right.
And the women decorate the hat. I'm not even sure. I guess maybe they have the sweatband in them already. But in a couple of hours, the women come out with a hat that they've decorated. Right. And apparently it's a big enough business that Tim at Pure Beaver Hat Supply, he's opened up a subsidiary business. Okay. It's all attached, but it's specifically geared to supplying the hat bar market.
Interesting.
He has, I think, the hats are largely wool, but I think there is some rabbit, and then he sells the trimmings. So sorry, Paul.
No, I was just saying it's I've seen it once in the UK, and I wondered about it. It was a sort of Western event where the ladies, predominantly ladies, could come along and do just that. There was a way that you would register your hat size, and they'd show you how to measure your head, and then you'd come along in the evening, and you'd actually put the beads and the cloth and so on around the hat and stress it and color paint it and all that sort of thing and leave with a hat. But I was saying to Luke that my wife and I have sat down and discussed my hat problem. I mean, business, and we've talked about we're putting the house on the market to move so that we can move nearer the coast and actually buy a bigger house to be able to have in the garden a cabin where I can just do not only making my hats, but also have a studio in there, but then invite people to come along. Because what I've found is that my approach to the custom hats has been to build a relationship with the customer, find out about them, their hat challenges and what they're trying to achieve, and then build the hat. And they love it so much that I've got people. I've only been going about 18 months, by the way, Robert. And as I say, your course and everything influenced me greatly. But I've got people that have bought as many as 8 hats from me now, which is wonderful, you know. And it's it's really nice to have a relationship. Yeah. And
tremendous legacy.
To get them and invite them along and actually go through the process and come along for a couple of days and stay over and enjoy the seaside and so on. That's the sort of vision that we're trying to achieve. And we're putting the house on the market at Christmas and we're looking at properties now. So I'm just hoping that we can make it a reality. You know, it's a big move, really.
Best of luck. That's exciting. One other thing to consider, Paul, while I it's on my mind. I'm at the age where if I park things in my mind, they get lost. A couple of times a year, I run classes, not to train people to be hatters, but it's kind of like an extended hat bar. And generally they're 3 days, 3 relatively leisurely days, and people come in and they're hat people that want to scratch that itch of making their own hat. And I run, it's like 2 to 3 people. So they get, because sometimes people need a lot of attention.
Yeah, a lot of attention.
But I run a class. They've actually came back a second time, but 2 men, a little bit younger than I, still working, and I had to teach them how to thread a needle. Like that's how limited their skill set was. I mean, when it first happened, my first thought was like, oh my God, this is going to be a long weekend. But it worked out, you know. It always amazes me because at the end of the 3 days, they walk out wearing a hat that they're thrilled with. You know, it's like not only do they have this hat, so and it can be quite lucrative. You know, it's like I'm at the low end. I charge $700 Canadian. You know, so if you're running, if you're 3 people, it's like there's $2,000. And what I would do is I would use that. I would throw that money into my equipment fund. You know, so it's like on the Monday I had $2,000 in my, and I could go shopping. So it was a win-win.
I've got the same thought. Yeah, I mean, I try and keep. In fact, I've just ordered another 20 or 30 felts from FEPSA, so I keep about 120 to 150 felts in stock at any one time. And you know, I want to be in a position where I don't want a retail presence, but I don't actually need. This sounds terrible. I do need the money, but I don't need the money. You know, it's not something that I rely on to live on. But it's but I need it to fund the equipment and to be able to give more back into it. But it would be lovely to have 2 or 3 people come in and do exactly what you just said, Robert. So I will take that to heart, and I will see how far we can get that, because it'll be great to do that.
Yeah. If you get to that step, drop me a note and I'll
we'll get you on the Zoom. We'll a big screen and get you on the Zoom.
A couple of practical considerations that I learned along the way.
Oh, that would be valuable. Thank you. Yeah.
And I mean, and the other thing too is it's fun in that I've done groups of strictly men, and I've done groups of strictly women, and like they're all fun because you get to spend a weekend with people who love hats, and are fully engaged in making, like people get so into it because it's like we're unveiling a mystery.
But you know what, Robert, because of this show, I met up with Ian, who's on here today. Ian lives in London, and I live in Winchester, which is just about 70 miles from London. So we actually met up, and I'd done a tour. Huh? Yeah, by the cathedral. Yeah, you know it. Yeah. We met in London, and I put together a tour of a number of hat shops like Lock and Co. and Bates and Laird and Thomas Farthing, British hat makers, and we walked around London. We walked nearly, I think it was like 17,000 steps, mind you, but we walked around London, and we had a bite to eat, and then we came on the show very briefly for Luke to give him an update. But is that something that you've done in Canada, or is it just not practical? Is there not enough hat shops around or anything?
Paul, this is how sad it is. There's no hat shops.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Let me take that back.
Yeah.
We have two, and one of them is in Vancouver proper, and when it started out, Luke, it was started by the woman that I took the course from.
Okay. Yeah.
An actual hatter,
Right.
and it was a legit hat shop, and they carried Borsellino and Christie at their top end, and then went down, and their low end was a Cupra. And I'd bought a number of hats from them because it was a real hat shop.
Yeah.
It still exists, but I think the market conditions, I deem it's now geared to the tourists.
Yeah.
And it sells low end impulse buy straw hats in the summer, Kangol caps in the winter, and it's no longer a legit hat store. And then about 45 minutes east of the city, in a small tourist oriented, a cute little historic town, there is a hat store, and the same thing, it's geared towards tourists. And so we don't have a legit hat shop. I don't have anybody to go talk to.
Yeah.
Oh, that's such a shame. Yeah, such a shame.
And we got one in our way. And then I haven't visited them yet, but I mentioned this on the show that I did over at Bencraft Hatters. I got to do that, but I haven't made my way over there. It's not that far away from me. And I think that I believe it's a lady that owns the shop, and she caters to more of the church lady hats, but she does sell men's hats as well. But it's worth visiting. So I got no excuse.
What city are you in?
I'm in the Northern Virginia area. So right near, in Prince William County. So Alexandria is maybe about, I would say 40 minutes without having done the drive lately. We just moved out here, and it's been a while. That shop has been around for a little bit. I just haven't made my way out there. I used to be in Alexandria, Old Town Alexandria, all the time. It just when I became a hat person, I've not found my way to that shop yet, but it's on my to-do list.
Even we're 2.5 hours north of Seattle.
Yeah.
And even in Seattle, they have one hat shop. And and it's more like a hat kiosk, because it's Elaine and I we just popped in to say hello to the woman, and it's like with the three of us in the shop, it was crowded. So it's she at least is it's a legit hat shop, but like Stetson would be her top end offering. And then it's probably been maybe 10 years now, but Seattle used to have one real hat shop, Bernie Utz, and they were a major Borsellino reseller. They had a whole wall of Borsellinos, but I think Bernie, I think he lost the lease because it was right downtown. So his lease ran out and they wouldn't renew. I think they wanted to redevelop, and rather than relocate, Bernie just he was elderly, and I guess he probably had no one to take over the business, so he just packed it in. And so, between here and Seattle,
this is why I keep going on and on about supporting your local hat your local hat shop, your local hatters, right? So if they don't have a hat shop, because if you don't support them, they go away. That's how things work. They, we were talking like when I was at Bencraft. He's got at least I think 2 kids in college. Steve Goldstein does. And I'm like, well, and he survives. The nice thing about Steve is that he has a very, very good customer base with the Orthodox Jewish customer base that he has. I think if it were not for them, he might have a little bit more trouble. But not everybody has access to that community. And so it's one of those things where I'm like, go support your local hatters, because if you don't, well, they run the risk of not being there and staying in business because people got to eat.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're right, and I think what I've done a couple of things actually. One is I've started selling felts wholesale to 1 or 2 of the hatters in the UK. I'm not many, mind you, but I've approached FEPSA and said, look, I'm willing to stock a few felts and distribute them. It's going to be a very small start, but let's see how it goes, and we'll see from there. And that will create a small amount of income. And I think the other thing is that I've been to 1 or 2. I think Josh just made a point there. I've been to a tailor's, a top end tailor's, and what we have, we're very much into our horse racing in the UK. And there's a place called Cheltenham, which is quite famous for its horse racing. And my daughter happens to live there, and I popped into one of the high-end tailors there, and I've given them half a dozen hats to see if they could open up the marketplace. But they basically are selling hats that, like you've said, Robert, they're the bottom end of the marketplace. People go in there and they're just not educated to move away from wool. And but everywhere I wear my hats, and I know Ian and I went to London, and we were saying recently on Luke's show that we got stopped 3 or 4 times. I think it was 3 times actually in London, where people just wanted to take photographs of both of us in our hats, and they were quite astounded that there'd be 2 gentlemen, well, blokes anyway, wearing hats in such a way that we were. But it was very nice. But what it highlights is that there's very few people, even in central London, that are wearing good quality hats. It's just such a shame.
Yeah. I don't know. I'd like your perspective on this, Paul, that because myself and my wife, we never leave the house without a hat on our head. And we're known in our we live in a what used to be a separate town, about a 45-minute drive east of Vancouver, east of the city. And but now it's like we're a suburb, right? It's all contiguous. But it still has a kind of a small town feel to it. And my wife and I are known, like, we're the hat people. And when we go into a store or a pub, we get greeted as if we are known. We're not known, other than the fact that we're the hat people, and people see us. It's like, oh, it's them. Hey, hi, how you doing? Or they'll talk to us about the hat we're wearing that day, and it's to the point where last summer, before, it was a super hot day, and I didn't even want to have a straw on my head, so we went to the pub, and they gave us hell. It's like, where's your hat? We didn't recognize you. But that leads me to that, because they're such great conversation starters.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And I have a belief that there's a lot more people that would like to be hat wearers, but they just can't, for whatever reason, they can't kind of take that step. It's always, it looks good on you. I wish I could wear a hat, but I can't. It's this. And
I think you're right, Robert. Yeah. And I think a lot of it is that that actually nobody sat down with them, and gone through with them the different types of hats, the different weights of hats, the size of brim, the size of crown, what might suit them and not. And what I, ideally, I love to sit in front of somebody or be with somebody and talk them through it. When that's not possible, actually taking them through a whole rafter of hats that I might have here and showing them the difference of the, the brim size and the and the crown size and how different that can look on you. It just changes your personality. And it's like, okay, look, if you're not going to buy 10 hats, and nobody really buys 10 hats at once, if you're just going to buy one hat, what do you want to wear with it? What color are you wearing? What's your complexion like? What's the weather like where you are? All those sort of things. And then when you get into that and you help them feel, or I help, at the time, for me, it seems like help them feel it's ownership, if you like, of the new look for themselves. It's almost like counseling them to get over the hump of wearing it. And, there are some clients, and not many, but some that have actually kept in touch when they've got the hat and they photographed when they've been wearing it and said, look, I had the courage to wear it down the pub, or I had the courage to go out to a friend's birthday party. And do you know what, Paul? It was the main thing that people talked about. It was amazing. And what I've done for people is I've done a little video of how I've made the hat, let's say, and given them that as well. So then they put it on their phone and they show it to their friends. And it really does motivate people to talk about it. And I think it's just that really. It's getting over the hump of being conscious about having something on your head and being, you stick out more than anybody else, that's for sure. You've got to have broad shoulders, so we say.
Yeah, that's so true.
Josh made a great comment here. I was talking to a young woodworker trying to break into woodworking. He is thinking about making hat blocks, as there is such a small amount of hat block makers. That's great. We need more of that. Again, everybody has to start. The more we can break down these barriers, the more it's going to be easy for that next crop of hatters to get into this.
Let me throw some water on that. I'm in contact with a long-running wooden hat block maker.
Okay.
There's the wooden block makers are struggling big time.
Ah, okay. Interesting.
I think it's a combination of and it may be more true in the UK than it is here, but it's certainly true here. Business has slowed down across the board, and we might not be in a full-blown recession by name,
right?
But certainly people are acting as if, because people are and it's across the board, and then I think for the wooden makers, the 3D print industry has taken a huge chunk out of their work.
I think I've seen some of that. Yeah. I mean, in the UK, we have the company I use is Boone and Lane. They're a world-renowned business, but there's just two men in a shed that looks like it's about to fall down. And they've openly said to me, Robert, that when they pass away, there's nobody that's coming in for them they can't find anybody to take on the skills and come and work with them. And they've made hat blocks for things like Batman, and they've made for lots of Nick Fouquet and people. I think Nick Fouquet and a few people. I've been there and I've seen orders come in from Japan, America, all around the globe. And in fact, I've experienced having to wait 8 weeks, 9 weeks for them to be able to then start talking about my blocks. But what really I find very, very good with them is that I can take a hat in and say, look, this is a style of hat that I really like. Can you advise me on which block I should have? And should we go down the route of custom blocks, or is this a standard block shape, or whatever? Their skills and their experience is extremely good. They work with the likes of Philip Tracy. He's a big hatter in the UK, and obviously Lock and Co. and people like Herbert Johnson. They make all their blocks. So it really is quite a business. I would hate to see that business go, but without a word of a lie, there's probably 2,000 or 3,000 blocks on the walls in that facility. I said to them one day, I said, look, would you allow me to sell your blocks that are in here on your behalf? Because I think there's probably £500,000 worth of blocks in history building. And I said, they sort of, what? And I said, yeah. I said, I'm standing here. And I said, look, just do a quick multiple. And we did some multiples, and they were like flabbergasted. So I don't know whether that's affected the way they're thinking at the moment in any way, shape, or form. But I think they weren't really aware of perhaps what they've got.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
There still are hidden troves of vintage blocks and flanges out there. I have a contact in Seattle, a hat maker, and I can't remember. I don't know if he found it on Facebook Marketplace, but it was a small town about an hour away from him. I think he bought like 200 flanges.
Wow.
Wow. Goodness.
And the fact that he bought them as a lot, uninventoried, it was just, he just phoned the guys up and said, I'll take them. And, he got them for like cheap, like maybe 25, 30 bucks a flange.
Right.
And then, there's a hatter down in Oregon that I converse with, and he works on a ranch. He owns a ranch farm, and he has a shed out back. He's been a hatter for, I think, coming on to 40 years. And he's got 300 flanges and a couple of hundred blocks in his shed.
Wow.
But he wants to sell, he won't piece them out. He wants to sell them as a lot.
Yeah.
And at this point in my life, I don't have the room to store them. But I mean, you could probably make money if you bought the lot and put some time into restoring them and then sell them either individually or in set. But it's like,
if it was in the UK, I'd jump at it. I can only imagine the cost of shipping them from America to the UK, because obviously they're big and bulky. But it sounds a great opportunity for somebody. But
I know it's like, I don't know. Maybe if I was 30 years younger, I would give it serious thought. But at this point, I know my limitations.
Yeah, it looks like Ian has has seen them for sale in the Camden Market in London.
I feel another journey coming up, another trip, Ian. I'm going to have to come up with a big bag and some cash.
Dynamic duo.
Road trip.
Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't go and just take a second here to ask for a quick hat check, because I know that there might be folks that watch this are watching now or will watch it when it's in syndication and want to know, hey, what are you guys wearing? I don't know. Maybe we'll start with Robert first, if that's okay, Robert.
Sure. This I threw this on my head because I wore it on Saturday in the rain, and so I left it out so it could dry unhindered. But it's not one of my hats. Okay. It's I've been a hat collector for 25 years.
Yeah.
And it's mostly I've gotten rid of my off the shelf hats other than a couple. So it's mostly it's a mix of vintage and custom. So this is a creation from Mike Miller at Northwest Hats in Eugene, Oregon. I think I own 10 of his, and it's like, you want to talk about a master hatter. Mike is a master hatter, and he's him and Art are my role models, I guess is the proper term, because they were both Mike in particular is who I wanted to become as a hatter, because he has the ability to if I describe a hat, I don't even need to give him a picture, but if I can give him a fairly clear description, he makes that hat. Like, he has the ability, whatever hat that I describe to him, he has the ability to make that hat and make it brilliantly.
Right.
And it's like, and I don't think I'll ever live long enough to reach his level of expertise. But so this is one of his, and it's kind of my I guess it's an exaggerated Homburg Lord's hat. It's like I've got a number in this style. It's like I love this style. It's a bit British. It's a bit Western.
Very regal.
It's a bit formal, but I also wear it with hoodies and a blue jean and blue jeans. You know, it's just and I've got it in multiple colors.
Yeah, me and Paul had that conversation. There's no way a Homburg or a Lord's hat can't look good. We're convinced.
Yeah, I mean, terrific. Is that about an 8 or 9 centimeter brim, and then you've got the curl on it, or have you not measured it at all? It looks really. It looks as though a regular brim on a Homburg in the UK would be no more than 7 centimeters, and then turned up depending on the size of the crown, of course. But that looks wider than that, like 8 or 9 centimeters.
Yeah, I think you're very good. I'm not. It's I don't have a metric measure with me, but this is to the edge of the brim. It's 2 3/4 inches.
Yeah, 2 3/4. So like, where have I got mine? Oh, here we are. So 2 3/4 is 7 inches, 7 centimeters. Sorry. Yeah. So it's exactly what I thought. Yeah. No, I like that. I will try and make one. I really like the look of it. It's lovely.
It's I guess it's an unbound brim, so it's more, and the deep pinch. It's more of a Lord's hat look, but it has I have a true Lord's hat that I bought, and truth be told, I don't wear it very often because I find the brim too stingy. It's like I regret if I'd have got the brim, maybe another half inch.
Yeah,
then like it would have been perfect.
Yeah.
Oh, I go through Facebook Marketplace, mostly to kill time. But a week ago, I came across, there used to be a hatter in Canada. The brand was Leon Drexler, and the hat maker was Stephen Temkin. He was taught by Art Fawcett as well. And I own 2 of his hats. And towards the end of his career, he had a 1-year wait list.
Oh, wow.
And a retail of just under $1,000.
Yeah.
And his hats are brilliant. And he was a classic fedora maker, more in the European styling.
Right.
A little bit lower crowns, a little bit more taper. But anyways, I came across a Leon Drexler on Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah.
Pristine, hardly ever been worn. And the guy was asking $100, but it was a 6 7/8. But I thought, I don't care. So I threw in an offer of $50.
Right.
Yeah.
And he accepted it.
Wow.
All right.
So my wife is now the proud owner of a Leon Drexler. And it's a trilby. It's kind of a classic trilby. And for $50, including the hat box. So
hey, that's pretty good. That's pretty good deal.
Yeah.
I think he stole that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was another hatter that, I mean, he was and probably always will be the best classic fedora maker in Canada. He was unmatched.
Hey, well, Robert, thanks for sharing.
You're welcome.
Paul, you want to go into what hat you're wearing?
Yeah, this one. This is my favorite fedora at the moment. It's I really love Hufford and Hornscoff in terms of their design, but some of them are it's just slightly too high for me. So I've fashioned this out of this is 100% beaver Fepsa felt. It's a sort of a beigey, greeny, grey color. In the flesh, it's a really nice color and obviously very soft. I've pounced it to within an inch of its life, I think, and it's trimmed on the brim and on the crown there in grosgrain. Now the thing is, in the UK, it's very difficult to find the grosgrain that has actually got the trimming on the edge. This is probably the ladies' grosgrain, if you like, but I'll live with that, given that I can't easily get the other grosgrain. And then on the top, I just have it as it's a diamond at the moment, but it can be round or whatever. But it shapes very nicely and forms very nicely, and on the inside just a regular one of my linings. But what I would say is I'm now using the guys over in North America there for my sweatbands. They're 2-inch sweatbands. They're much softer leather. I haven't been able to find anybody that provides Rowan leather sweatbands in the UK or anywhere that I can get them to ship to the UK yet. I'm sure I will, but at the moment these are probably the best I can find. And I'm fortunate enough to have the Gault blocking machine, so I do all the Gault blocking here. And the only thing that I've yet got to find, because I can't buy an ASM stitching machine to actually stitch in the brim. So what I've got is an industrial machine that will allow me to stitch in the sweatband around to the brim, but it's stitched in the ditch rather than the proper way, and that's really frustrating for me, because I'd like to do it the proper way, but I just can't buy there's no distributor in the UK, and the American ones obviously run on a different electrical cycle. So I'm still looking. I'm trying to find if I can get the adapter that goes on the ASM machine that will go on my industrial machine, because my industrial machine has got the arm that comes out, the proper arm for doing hats and everything, and I have got enough clearance to get the brim under there. So I may get there in the end, but just at the moment I'm stitching in the ditch, I'm afraid. But it's very difficult to see it.
We'll finish your thought and we'll come back to that.
All I was going to say to end that was that there are a number of hatters in London, like Bates of London, for instance. They're stitching in the ditch. So there's not many in the UK that are actually stitching in the correct way. I suspect it's because they're struggling to find the machinery.
Okay, can I address that now?
Do it,
please. Yeah.
I hand stitch my sweatbands.
Okay.
I decided earlier on at this point in my life, in Canadian dollars, it's $5,000 for an ASM imported to Canada, and it's like I'm never going to get that money out of it. And given that I don't need to. I have the luxury of being inefficient, right? I don't need efficiencies.
Yeah.
And I don't need the grief, because I've talked to hatters. Mike Miller, for one, talked about the ASM can give you no end of grief. I talked with a female hatter that has bought one, and she's had it for 3 months now, and she still can't get it to work properly. Gotcha. And so her next step is she spent $5,000 on it, and her next step is to spend another $800 for a different presser foot. So it's like, here's this poor woman in tears, and I'm thinking, for me, because I could see myself in her position, I'm quite content doing the stitching. But I've always felt bereft in that I do both. I started off doing the stitch in the ditch as a based stitch. And then I would flip the sweat out and I would hand stitch through the retape. I could probably now do it like hour and 10 minutes for both. And then initially I would then remove the base stitch.
Got it.
But sometimes the results were less than perfect. So what I came to is, I continued, and I would do smaller and smaller base stitches.
Right.
And then that held the sweat in place, so I could then sew the retape. But one day I had this blinding flash, and it was, if I'm spending all this time to carefully put in the base stitch, why don't I just leave it?
Right.
Now, there are hatters that would jump on that as being categorically wrong.
Right.
But the point that I wanted to get to, so now my hats, the sweatbands are double stitched. there's the stitch in the ditch with about, I don't know, a 1/4 inch at the most spacing. And if you do the stitch in the ditch properly, it's invisible. And then I go back and I do about a 3/4 inch stitch through the reed tape.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm happy with that.
Because now I got it. Yeah. So what I did, I bought a
last point, because this is what made me think of it, is it was on the Facebook page, and it was a discussion about the stitch in the ditch and how long that is. And this fellow came on and he said, the stitch in the ditch is not wrong. It's just different. Because in the millinery tradition, that's how they do it. The milliners do the stitch in the ditch. And that's probably why all of the UK hatters do it, because in the UK, the millinery tradition is so strong.
Right.
Yes.
Rather than the hatting tradition.
That feels
that probably is. And the other thing that I could never figure out why, but have you ever seen the sweatbands that Guy Morse Brown sells?
Yes, I've bought them. Yeah.
Because they have no retape.
No.
If you buy one of their sweatbands, you have no choice but to do the stitch in the ditch.
Yeah.
Who's Guy Morse Brown's major market? Milliners.
The UK. Yeah, milliners. Yeah.
So it all kind of fits together, and it's like, so I've relaxed. I'm not so defensive or apologetic about it anymore, because I've adopted the position that the stitch in the ditch is not wrong. It's just different.
That's made me feel a lot better, Robert. And actually, thank you so much for the explanation, because it puts a lot of blocks in place. You're quite right about the UK, and actually, there's the main suppliers of millinery product in the UK, which also supply hatters products. They don't have many hatters to supply. There's maybe a dozen outside of London. Okay, and therefore the quality is made just for them. So you either have to make your own sweatbands, and I've been looking into doing that actually, or buy from abroad. And I'm actually very happy with buying the ones from America at the moment, so I'll order up more of those. But what I did was I invested in a second-hand industrial machine with the arm that comes out, the cylindrical arm, and a pretty high distance between the arm and the top of the machines, or bottom of the machine, so you can put your hat in there and stitch round. And in fact, it was a £4,500 machine that I managed to get for around 1,500. So it's still a sizable investment, but actually I can justify and get that money back, because probably I'll sell it for more or less that secondhand if and when I wanted to sell it. But do you know what? You've just convinced me not to get the ASM machine now. So thank you for that. You've just saved me $5,000 or pounds or whatever.
It's and there was earlier on in the I think it was on the Fedora Lounge, and he was I don't know what nationality he was European, and he too was literally in tears. New hatter, he'd made the buy of this ASM machine, and like he couldn't get it. It wasn't like he was unhappy with the results. He couldn't get it to work, and he worked like months. And so I directed him to Tim at Pure Beaver, and it's like, maybe talk nicely to Tim, and maybe he'll walk you through it. But it's like there's frustration. It's not a panacea.
Oh yeah. No, I mean, and I think the other thing that you made as a point is that there are a gentleman there. I think you said he was been a hatter for 40 years, and I think certainly from my point of view, I'd like to continue my journey to improve myself with the quality of the products that I'm buying to put into a hat, and the things that I learn about making a hat. I mean, one of my big frustrations again is that I look at the Hornscough and the Hufford hats and the Nick Fouquet, and their linings are so beautiful. And we again, there's nobody in the UK making decent linings, so you have to make them up yourself. If you want something that's half decent. But I think I'm never going to be a great hatter like these guys, but I think I can make a decent enough hat that people will look at it and think, you know what, I'm really proud to own one of Paul's hats. And that's all I can ever really ask for. And I think anyway at this stage, and I'm very, very proud of that, being able to do that. You know, I never thought in a million years I'd be doing this, believe me.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about. And Paul, you have at least 2 customers, on this call now. Then I'm pretty sure I speak for the other customer that we're pretty proud, and we're also proud of the journey that you're still continuing on. I made mention of that, and that wasn't, that's no small feat. Again, you're not resting on your laurels. You're still evolving your craft, and so it's going to be really exciting to see where Paul is 1, 2, 3 years from now, and where his product goes, because you've made such strides, and that's with the help of folks like Robert. That's why, Robert, you're so important, and your legacy really is a very beautiful thing, because by Paul came on here and extolled long before you came on here. Paul was extolling the folks that shortcutted his process, folks like yourself. I don't know if it's Mikhail or Michael at Huffbud. I heard Morgan say Michael, so I switched away from Mikhail until I hear from himself. I'll call him Michael. But yes, folks like you guys have shortcutted this process, and that's really what is all about, right? In such a small community, is how do we, one, get together? We may have differences of opinion, obviously. There are going to be stylistic conversations, but in the end, we all love hats, and if we can help each other out and shortcut the process, what's not to like, right?
Yeah,
definitely.
And there is in amongst the hatters, there's a certain I can't think of the proper word for it, but like there's certainly a lot more information out there now than when I began.
Right.
And so I think it was typical that if you were a hatter, you were self-taught, right. And it was strictly trial and error, bullheadedness, stubbornness, and willingness to work through the issues. But there's a certain pridefulness amongst hatters that I learned this on my own through trial and error.
Right.
You should too.
Right. School of hard knocks.
Which is, I mean, I think there's a validity there, but that goes back to the time because there's certainly, when I started, I was the only hatter in this area. And now I think there's 8 of us.
Oh, really?
I'm still a fedora maker. They're all, different genres, but there's just so much more interest in hatting now than there was back then. And so my position was, and I would be appalled at the quality of some of the hats that people are selling at inflated prices.
Right.
And I took offense to that because it hurts hatters. It's like, if I'm a new customer and I've dropped $500 on this custom hat that I'm so excited to receive, and I receive a piece of crap, am I likely to buy another custom hat?
Yeah, good.
Yeah, no,
not
no.
likely. And so, anything I can do to even minimally help hatters be better is good for the craft and good for me, because these people are going to be making hats regardless.
Right.
So it's good for the craft to, maybe give them a leg up. What they do with it. So that's where it's coming from.
Yeah. Right. You can lead the horse to water, but you can't make him drink, right? But the nice thing is, like I said, I feel like, honestly, Robert, that's the legacy that I think is you're probably already the most proud of is the fact that you're probably a big part of the reason why that information's out there now with your course, with your interactions on Facebook. Because I mentioned that before. I've seen you and I knew of you well before we got to meet, because I seen you there interacting with everybody, but especially the hatters, the hat makers, and sharing your opinions. Because a lot of folks could have said, "Oh, I don't care as long as I'm okay," but you care.
And there are those that will no longer speak to me,
Right,
because I've dared criticize their work.
Right.
I mean,
and it's like, well, if you're that thin-skinned, maybe you're in the wrong craft.
Right.
Yeah.
That's actually that actually could probably be its own show, right? So the idea of how to take criticism, right? And I know that sounds really silly, right? Because for some folks, it could be a personality thing, meaning that it might not be very malleable. But obviously, within a certain spectrum, there are things that one can do to probably prepare oneself to receive criticism and to have a more fruitful discussion, right? When it comes down to your fellow hatters, because again, knowing that criticism will come your way, and it's not because they want to knock you down, right? If that's the part that I think there has to be an understanding of, is that if I have a critique, it's kind of like an artist, right? I have a family member that is an artist. He interacts with other artists, and he has to, like, I feel like at some point, if you expose yourself to enough criticism, then you kind of start seeing beyond that as an attack. But a lot of folks will shy away from it, right? They'll be like, well, I won't go to a gallery with other artists because I don't know what'll happen then. Well, you can't really help those folks, really, right? They're going to shield themselves.
Yeah, and I think, and related to that, Paul, I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. Is I've noticed with some new hatters that those that particularly that don't have a personal hat background, and they're producing a hat and they have no personal critical eye, like they don't have the ability to critique their own product because they don't understand, like they've never owned a good hat, or they don't understand what makes up a good hat, and so they produce this hat, and it's like in their mind's eye, it's like it's pretty damn good,
right?
But when you compare it, it's like, no, it's not. There's so many things wrong with this hat, but they don't see that because they don't know what they don't know,
right?
And they tend to be very, very defensive, or they can be, because I think
I found that as well in the UK, Robert. I think a lot of the time I've found that hatters that are starting out that haven't done some research. I mean, look, when you're starting any business, really, you want to look at the research in the marketplace,
right?
Research the competition, the pricing, the suppliers, the types of materials, all that sort of thing. And what I've seen is, especially some of the youngsters, a lot of the youngsters have used wool to start off with. And of course, there's nothing wrong with wool, but it's quite a difficult felt to work with and to get any real results. And actually, when people, if they pay, over £100 for a wool hat, and and it doesn't perform in the wet, or it doesn't give them, more than a season's wear, then it's pretty poor show. We've got people that are selling wool hats for £300-400 in the UK, and I think that's wrong. I mean,
Yeah, it's one of those things where I'm like, again, in terms of like the great thing is that Facebook groups exist, right? Robert, happens to run one of the custom hatting Facebook groups. So those folks that are okay with receiving criticism, or are at least okay with learning how to receive criticism, they can self-select themselves into that group. And obviously, I don't know if you have to be a hatter, but I'm sure there might be like a rules, whether you have to be verified hatter to attend those. But I feel like those things could benefit anybody, right? If you have a job, right? If you're somebody that works with other people, you could benefit from learning to take criticism, right? Like if you have a boss right? A lot of folks, nobody goes in just. I feel at some point everybody has a boss. If you have a mom or dad, you probably had a boss, right? It's like you didn't come into the household, dictating. You took critiques, and learning how to separate the criticism from your self-esteem, right? So not making it a blow to your self-esteem is a valuable tool. And I feel like those are the things that I think get lost in the sauce, so to speak, other than making the widgets, right? This idea of how does one interact with the general public and with your colleagues, so that you can benefit from, right? The idea of getting ahead versus getting along, right? Sometimes you can get ahead by getting along. And sometimes getting along means swallowing your pride and taking that criticism and then saying, okay, I am not going to throw out the baby with the bathwater, right? I mentioned that before. It's a beautiful baby. Why would I throw it out? Right? It's like I may not have heard it, the advice in the way that I wanted to hear it, but it might still be good advice. And I'd be foolish to just throw it out. So it's one of those things. I feel like this is a really great, obviously I intended to talk about something else, but we're an hour and a half into this. I think this is a great show because, well, it's organic, right? Like, I come up with these topics as a straw man, but all I really want is for this to happen, meaning everybody says hi and how's your day? And then we get a real organic discussion here.
Oh, that's good.
It's fun.
I mean, one of the things I've said to myself is I should never let a hat go out to a customer that I wouldn't be proud of wearing myself. And when you sit down and you critique a hat and you critique the work you've done, there are times, probably 6 times in the last 6 months, that I've looked at a hat before it's going to go out and I've just said nah, and I've deconstructed it and I've redone it. And the customer wouldn't know, of course they wouldn't, but I'm not happy until I'm happy.
Yeah. I think, well, just for your own mental health, it's like you have to approach it in that way, Otherwise, it's I have to admit, every time I put a hat in the mail, it's kind of my heart flutters, it kind of moves up into my throat a bit, because it's like, this is me, this is my creation, this is my baby. First, like, will it fit?
Right.
And will he like it? And it's kind of like, but it's like, I had this thought the other day that, after 7 years, I'd like to think that I'm over that, but it's like apparently not, and maybe that's a good thing,
Keeps you sharp.
It's
I think it's a good thing, actually, Rob, but just not get too stressed over it. But you're quite right. I've gone through and do go through the same experience, because you love what you're doing and you love what you're producing, and actually I find it quite difficult to let a hat go. I mean, that might sound silly because I'm not surrounded here in this image, but literally I'm surrounded in the house with lots of houses. I'm sure you're the same, Robert, and especially from a collector's point of view, I find myself just spending half an hour of an evening just looking at the various hats, trying them on, and just remembering the story of either why did I make that hat, or when I bought that hat secondhand and I recreated it, or actually refurbished it. I do a lot of refurbishing, as you know, Luke, and I just love that process of bringing a hat alive. And I'd love to be able to know the story of the hat, from the person that bought it. And in fact, there's one hat that I'm trying to get at the moment, which is a Harley Street doctor actually bought the hat originally from Lock & Co, I think, wore it throughout his career. His daughter's now got it and she wants to sell it. And it does need a good refurbish. But, there's a sort of beautiful story to it that you think, that's a hat that was really bought for a purpose by a gentleman who likely walked every day down Harley Street in London wearing that typical hat.
Yeah.
And, and I want to be able to refurbish that hat, put some new silk ribbon on it, and get somebody to do it again. It's a great, lovely thing to do.
Yeah,
I love it.
If I and I know hatters that earn a living they're in the Western market.
Yeah.
Where working cowboys beat the shit out of their hats, and like they earn a living as hat restorers.
Right.
And with the bigger brims on the Western hats, it's like it's much more expensive to ship them,
Right.
particularly up to Canada. But if I lived down the States, like if I was somewhere in Arizona or Texas, I would be inclined to carve out a business as a hat restorer.
Yeah.
I absolutely love doing that work. It is so satisfying.
Yeah. Josh, who's in Alabama, restores hats, and he publishes a lot of his videos. And Paul's by Paul's own story, he was able to fund a lot of his hat making processes with the restoration process of selling, restoring and then selling for a profit. And in which case he was able to reinvest, which I think is great because it provides at least a blueprint out there of how one could do this if you don't have a whole lot of startup money, right? And obviously, our significant others are a big part of our success, and we have a duty to them to make sure that we're not being foolhardy with our funds, right? And obviously that varies to a certain degree, but in general, I feel like it's a good lesson of how to keep your head not being so lumpy. For us guys that are a little bit don't know those lessons, it's like maybe I'm using my hat to cover all the lumps I got for not listening to my significant other. But I think it's wise to get these things to shortcut the process, because it could save you. Who knows? It could save you probably a divorce, right?
I think that, like you, Paul, I don't need my hat revenue to keep a roof over my head, which is I'm so grateful, because it is something that I tell new hatters should they ask, and it's like, this is a very tough way to make a buck.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because after all you're doing is you're trading your time for dollars.
Correct.
It's not a business that you can't scale it. It takes what it takes to build a hat, and you can build in efficiencies, but that means buying machinery, which means even more capital expense on an already expensive venture. It's like it's tough. It's very tough, and the people that I've come in contact. Well, I mean, so many have come into the craft with great vision and great excitement with what they want to do.
Right.
And within a year or so, it's like they're gone, because it's like the hill is just so damn steep.
Yeah, and that's why I feel like Paul, and I feel like Paul. I have to say this because Paul is somebody that again has a background in building businesses, right? And as a business coach, and I feel like a lot of these things that Robert just mentioned, Paul is in the process of, okay, how could it be done, right? If one could do it, right? And that's why when Paul visits Lock & Co., he visits Bates and all the other great hatters that he has access to in his backyard. I feel like Paul's not just sitting there talking about hats just to talk about hats. I mean, he's doing that, but he's also trying to figure out, okay, how could I get to that, right? Or somewhere on that spectrum, right? So maybe the idea is not to become Lock & Co., but something maybe in between that Paul is like, okay, I'm really proud of taking it this far. And that's a beautiful thing.
I think you're quite right, Luke. I mean, I've sat down and I've monetized the fact that it takes 4 or 5 hours to make a good hat, and 4 or 5 hours at £40 an hour, and then you put in the cost of the materials, the felts, the ribbons and everything, and the sweatband and so on, and you get to a point where you want to put a little bit of profit on it. But in the UK market, it's very difficult to charge over £200 for a new hat. So that's a journey that what I've felt is that by selling as much of an experience of taking the customer through the experience of talking to me, establishing what type of hat might work for them, recording it on video, and giving them that sort of experience, if you like, of going through, because it's the tip of the iceberg. This is the tip of the iceberg, but it's actually what's underneath it that, showing them the video of FEPSA. When you look at FEPSA, they've got 400 people working for them. They make most of the felts in Europe and possibly the world, and when you talk about to produce this, you're buying things from America, from Europe, from the UK, and you're actually bringing it together and then using your skills to make it happen. And I think, but moving forward, I think there's a gap in the market. My son, I think I've said before, is a coffee man. He's a barista, and we thought about doing coffee and hats. And if we get down to the coast, and if we get my academy sorted out, then who knows? We may even open a small cafe on the seafront that's a bit like Nick Fouquet, where he did it, I think, over in California. But it's very much a drop-in. Come and have a coffee. You can see my 100 hats on the wall. You can try them on. You can see me making them in the back. And it's that sort of thing that we've talked about, my son and I. But it's a bit of a way off at the moment. But I think it's finding a way to bring down the barrier of tradition that you have to put a suit and a jacket on to wear a fedora. No, you don't. Jeans and t-shirt looks great. Can look brilliant. I mean, I'm a great lover of the open road style American hat, and I think I call it an American hat, but frankly, it should be more of a UK hat now, because it's really a relaxed way of wearing some head covering. That and the Panama. Well, why wear a Panama in the shape of a traditional Panama? You saw that I reshaped that traditional Panama into a 1940s style fedora the other day, and I think it looks absolutely terrific. To be able to, but try and buy one like that, and you just can't find them anywhere. So
and Josh has a great comment here. It said there's a hat shop in Korea that is a coffee shop and a custom hat shop. So it looks like you got some precedence here. So that means if those folks have an online presence, that's already a model that you can try to see if how's it going, and maybe they could shortcut your process. You know what I mean? That, again, this is the beauty, right? And there's beauty in being first. There's also beauty in not being first, and then refining that process. As long as we're kind of collaborating and there's kind of that open dialogue and moving away from that veil of secrecy that seems to be permeating a lot of the trades, right? Like Robert mentioned. I learned it myself. It's a medieval process, right? Go learn it yourself. I'm like, that's not. That sounds like a hazing, like fraternity hazing to me. And I feel like it shouldn't be that way. I don't want to swallow a goldfish,
Yeah. I think there's the artistry in hats as well.
I think there's a given my age, I can authentically call myself old school, and I think we've lost a lot when kind of the apprenticeship concept. I think people today want to get there before they've paid their dues. Right. And I remember, Paul, coming back on a plane from the UK, and I was sitting beside a gentleman he was in his 80s, and he told me the story of he was a master cabinet maker. And he started as a 12-year-old.
Goodness.
And he didn't touch a piece of wood till he was about 15 or 16.
Wow.
He was the T-boy.
Yeah.
He was the kid that swept the floor, cleaned the glue brushes, and did all the shit jobs. Right. And then once he had sort of proven his mettle, then they allowed him to actually touch a piece of wood.
Yeah.
And so there is that it's like struggle with it a little bit, and it's like,
right.
It's like you want to help young hatters, but at the same time, I think by its very nature, it needs to be hard, because the reality is, it is hard.
Right.
So if we save them from themselves in the beginning, are we doing them a favor?
Interesting point.
Because
they're going to staying power,
Yeah, because they're going to get there at some point, aren't they, Paul?
Right.
And it's like, okay, what do I do from here?
Exactly. I think I must admit, I feel a bit of a pretender, as it were, because I've had nobody apart from yourself. And, as you know, I invested in the course. I go through the course on occasional basis and learn things from it still. But there was nowhere really I could go. There was videos that I just watched online, and I always put in, for a medical reason, I had to start wearing hats. And so therefore I had to find something that I wanted to wear, and I couldn't. And I didn't want to pay £500, £600, £700 to Lock & Co in London and so on to make one. So I just researched it and had a go, as it were, at first. So I feel as though I'm a bit of a pretender. However, I am putting in the hours, not just to make the hats, but to research, to work with the suppliers, to understand the business model, and putting back something into it by helping a few other people, which is an absolute pleasure. Josh has reached out on the odd occasion. It's been lovely to help him, and there are a few others.
Yeah,
so I have to agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, and it's complete. And anybody that knows, anybody that's raised a child, right? Kind of feels, already seen some of that process, right? Where you're like, okay, we have that kind of that want to try to shortcut the process for our kids, although, right, we do know that sometimes, right, so we're like, we'll give them all the advice, sometimes we'll nag them, right, we'll do all these things, you better do this, you better do this or else, and then in the back of your mind, you also know that experience is many times the best teacher. And you're like, well, you know what, I hope they don't have to go through something that they cannot overcome, right? If I get a sense that's the thing, I'll interject myself. Otherwise, I'll have to kind of just trust the life process, right? Trust the life process to do the things that life does to mold people into being productive members of society, right? And it's one of those things where I'm like, well, that kind of life told you that you shouldn't have done that, and you did it, and then what happened. And it's tough, right? That's one of the toughest things as a parent, because a lot of times it's almost like, in many ways, you kind of have a little bit of a God complex, because you kind of see things happening, and sometimes you got to let it happen, right? With that girlfriend that that's not going to work out, right? You're like, oh, I know this is not going to work out, but I can't say anything because then I'll be the guy that doesn't like the girlfriend, Robert's laughing because I like, you don't get to Robert's age and Paul's age and to my age without going through this stuff. But Robert, if you want to opine, please do.
It's just that I think it's got to be Elaine and I were not blessed with children, so I can only speak from my personal experience as a child and receiving parenting. But it's got to be a bitch to be a parent, because your heartfelt desire to help your kid, and the reality is a father's job is to make it hard,
right?
Because through the hardness, that's what forges a man. And that's why a mom and a dad is so important, because the mom is there to pick you up when you fall and put a Band-Aid on it and kiss the boo-boo,
right?
Where the dad's job is make it hard,
right?
It's an exaggeration, but it's like maybe the best thing the father can do is actually throwing the kid off the dock to teach him how to swim.
Yeah, and you make a great point, Robert, because it just reminds me of my parents, right? So a lot of people ask me, is like, you're so respectful of your dad. He must have really beat your behind. I'm like, my dad's only disciplined me physically twice in my life. And I remember both times because they were significant events in my life. But oftentimes my mom disciplined us because she knew that if she didn't do it first, my dad will be a little bit heavy-handed with us. So my mom, in her infinite wisdom, like that, why my mom was the original psychologist. She said, listen, I'm going to discipline them first. Then when you get home, I'll let you know. And then you don't have to do anything because I already did it. And of course, my mom was a lot, she was tough, but she wasn't like my dad. So we learned. And my mom, like, thank you, Mom, because my dad did discipline us twice, and forget about it. We didn't want that again.
It's like, okay.
So needless to say, we were well behaved.
I want to loop back, and I have a question for Paul, and we just touched on it.
Yeah.
And how you determine the sale price of your hats. And if I heard you properly, it sounds that we operate on a similar basis. And what I do is, and it's totally unbusinesslike in that I determine my cost, my bare cost, felt, trimmings, and then I always add in $10 for shop supplies. And then I look at the style of the hat and how many hours it's going to take me to do it, with like brim curls and brim binding are the two big ads certainly in terms of time. And then I attach a dollar value, not to my cost. I don't mark up my costs. It's like my costs are my costs. But I take the hours and I just attach an hourly number, and it's like, okay, that's what I want out of the hat, and that's how I determine my sale price. And so that my material cost is, I don't mark that up. That stays a constant, and I do my best to. I've got about 220 felts and straws in my stock, and I work really hard at buying on sale. So whenever a sale comes, or whenever I can buy closeouts, and so I work really hard at keeping my costs low. My sweatbands, I buy a gross every February. So things like that, whatever I can do to keep my costs low, but then from there, that's what my selling price. And right from the beginning, I remember in a business class, is that they talked about like setting your price point is very much a marketing strategy,
right?
And it's like where do I want to fit into the market? And Porco Quitlam is
I think what they're talking about there, Robert, is they're talking about, excuse me, I think what they're talking about there is looking at pricing from the bottom up, which is what you've just talked about and I talked about, or from the top down. And so from the top down, I go out into the marketplace online and I look to see at other hatters, what would they sell a 50-50, beaver, rabbit, fedora for, and with a trim brim or something. And then I look at, where do I really see that my customer might perceive my brand is sitting within the marketplace, and therefore what can my brand do, if anything, to the value of the hat, and then work from the bottom up as to, quite rightly, what the material costs are, labor costs, profit that you want to include, and so on. And you sort of end up at a compromise, if you like, that usually works out an acceptable level, and I think, to the customer. And I think also I look at the customer and I see, if they're an enthusiast, that clearly they've got. I always remember one customer. He said to me, he's got 40 hats in his collection. He ordered one, and by the time we'd finished the custom one hat, he'd bought another two from me. And so I'd worked out a good deal for him on the hat, his first hat, and actually, it was a pleasure, because that's part of the thing. So there is this, top down and bottom up, and meeting somewhere in the middle that you feel comfortable with, that can sustain your business. Because at the end of the day, even this week I'm having a conversation with a client who's been enthusiastic about developing their business, but they've let their eye go off of negotiating with suppliers to get a good deal on the price for their materials that they're buying. One of the costs that they've got at the moment that's very high is transportation, their cars and the way that they're doing there, and it's bringing those things back into line. So take care of the pennies, and the pounds will take care of themselves. And it's we don't have to be greedy, we just have to be making enough money to stay in business.
Yeah. Yeah, so we operate very similarly because I also look at the ceiling in terms of, well, it's like Mike Miller out of Eugene and Michael Gannon, both master hatters, and their prices have stayed astonishingly low. You know, where it's kind of the goal of hatters is to establish your name and your brand, and then you can escalate your pricing. They haven't done that. They're still for 100% beaver. Last time I checked, they're at the $450 level, which is kind of, you know, given the rise in beaver felts, it's like $450 is astonishingly low. And so for me, 450 is my absolute ceiling. And so you're right. Then I work at the bottom up and just from a marketing point of view, you know, so I'll come in 4.25, you know, like just underneath. And it's like, and it's not often, I think people choose a custom hatter, and price point isn't necessarily at the top of the list because I'm not sure. I'm not sure if people actually go price shopping when they buy a custom hat. I think it's more they'll see one of my hats and they'll get excited about it. And as long as my price point is kind of within their accepted limits, they'll take the jump rather than let me see how much Mike Miller is going to charge today. I don't think it's.
I think what I've explained to them, Robert, I've explained to a number of people that if you go to somebody like Lock & Co, who make a beautiful hat, they will get the felts and then they'll get them along to a producer in Luton, place in just north of London, well known for making hats, and they will own the metal presses, and then they will get them shaped using the metal presses, and then those will come down to their shop in London in St James, and they will then trim the hats and make the final hat. So it's very few of their hats are actually made by hand. So what we offer as custom hatters is all of our hats are open. Well, I think most of our hats are open crown, and we shape the crown to actually suit the customer and give them the flexibility that if they don't like, you know, a teardrop, we can put it to a center crease, or we can do it to a diamond, or whatever it may be. But it's the flexibility, I think, that we give as hatters and doing custom hats that means that a lot of the time our clients can walk down the high street in their town and they won't see anybody else wearing the same hat.
Yeah.
All right. Well, gentlemen, I am going to close the show because I had a work meeting coming up in just like a couple minutes. Man, what a discussion. You guys, man, I know we didn't talk about the evolution of hats, and that's okay because you know what? We have a show next week. So, you know, I'd be happy to like put that topic and shelve it to the next week, and we'll just do a part 2, even though we didn't cover that here. I'll just call it part 2. But I want to thank Robert, Paul, our folks here. We had Ian, Josh, and Dark Soul Knight. Thank you guys all for what a great show. This is exactly what I wanted to accomplish here on the channel, and I can't wait to do it again next week, guys. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just close this out and say, just support Robert, support Paul, right? Paul has a YouTube channel. Robert, I'm not sure if you have a YouTube channel.
No, I'm not that sophisticated.
Yeah, you have an Instagram. I'll put their information up on the description. And just support these gentlemen because they really are doing so much for the community. And even if you don't support them, though, you know where this is going. Even if you don't support them, what I will tell you is without a shadow of doubt that you need to do, and that's stay hatting, my friends. Have a great day. Ciao, everybody.
Thank you, Luke. Great chatting, Paul.
Thanks, Robert.
Thank you.
You too.
See you guys
Cheers
next week.
Hope so.